Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on supply chain changes and possibilities for Czech Republic. We are still waiting for our moderator, but I would like to welcome on a room of the Nordic Chamber in Czech Republic. Our speakers for today are Jan Soderlund from SKF, and Petr Rožek from Association of Transport. I always make a mistake. Peter, so sorry if I introduce your company in a wrong way.
Oh, well, we are a little bit better. We are not transport, we are forwarding association.
Yes, I know.
We are the engineers of the transportation. No, okay, it doesn't matter.
Many thanks.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lukas Komanda. I'm chief economist of Trinity Bank, which is a small Czech bank, and I'm also a microeconomist. So I'm observing and monitoring everyday macroeconomic development here in our country and, of course, globally. And analyzing upon this and forecasting future progress. So major problem, as we all know, of current global economy or post-pandemic economy is some problems with supply chains issues. We have felt it here in the Czech Republic quite strongly because we are too dependent on automotive, and automotive, of course, has been hit quite strongly by the supply chains problems, and especially semiconductors outages, and there is still some big issue in our automotive in companies like Skoda, which has had impact on our macroeconomic development in general. So it's problem that was not foreseen before the pandemic, and we hope this year it will be better, and during the next few months I think we can get to quite a normal state of affairs in this regard. But we will see, and I will cover it with my guests today during this panel, during the supply chain panel, which is organized by Nordic Chamber of Commerce, and YIT is partner for this year. So we are grateful for this support, and we are also grateful for the audience to be here with us. So let me firstly introduce today's speakers. We are also very grateful that they are with us today as well. So Jan Soderlund, who is purchasing director of SKF AB, which is a Swedish company, one of the largest producers of bearings, for example. So it's a globally present company which has a lot to say about the current supply chains problems and issues, and the forecasts about the future development. And second speaker is Petr Rožek from Association of Forwarding and Logistic, and his speech will be about actual situation and current situation in supply chains globally, and forecast for coming months. Mr. Soderlund will be speaking about sustainability of supply chains. So I'm looking forward to both presentations, and it will take about 20 minutes for every presentation, and then there will be 5 or so minutes for Q&A session. So thank you once again, and now I would welcome here Mr. Zodelund to present his speech and his presentation and his view on current state and sustainability of supply chains. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And my name is Jan Söderlund. I'm based in Gothenburg. I will not talk too much about SKF, but we are about 45,000 employees around the globe. And the main business is, of course, bearings. And we have 91 factories around the globe. And you can see that this is where we have the supplier structure, which means we have direct material then sending parts around the globe. It's 5,879 suppliers around the globe. And we have suppliers in 71 countries, and they are delivering to our 91 factories. To the left, you see the countries. To the right, you see the flows. So it's a lot Europe, from China. It goes to Europe and so forth. And one of our strategies is, of course, to get rid of all these China to Europe, China to US and stuff like that, because the last 2 years it has created a lot of issues, a lot of delays. I will start a little bit talk about these flows and the challenges in the flows, and then I will jump into sustainability and what we are doing there to reduce our CO2 footprint. What we see right now about air cargo capacity, because the last 1.5 years, I mean, we are sending by ship, air and ocean. The ocean freight is big, but the last 1.5 years we have had to use a lot of air shipment because there has been so turbulent in the supply chain. And there has been a decline then in the air market. Now I will show you some statistics, but you don't need to look at all the details, but I just want to show you a little bit what is going on. So capacity has been a decline, but you can see also here that the last time, I mean, we use airline freighters, then we have this passenger belly where we send things in the passenger airplanes where they have capacity for transportation too, and freighters. And it has been going up, but now we see that there are some big risks here because especially the belly is going down. When it comes to air freight market, the outlook for it, you can see that nothing is really green. There are some congestions that is worse in some lanes and a little bit better on some, but nothing is really stable right now. And if you look at the container index, you can see that the huge increase we had, it went up, then we had a slightly going down on the rates, but now we see it's very unstable. For 2022, we don't really know what will happen due to the situation of the market. Will the prices go up or will it go down? So we are following this, but it will be interesting to also hear what Peter is saying. If you look at the ocean freights, this is a lot of figures, but if you look on the top left, the schedule reliability, if you see the normal reliability on the ocean freight, you have like 65 to 85% reliability. But on the bottom, you see what it looks like right now. It's like 35% reliability. And then to the right, you have the late vessel arrivals. Normally it's 3, 4, 5 days. Now it's 7, 8 days. So with this, then for us, we need to book transportation earlier. The suppliers need to send the goods earlier. And then we also have to fill up the stock. And it's a lot of money that we have increased the stock just to be able to secure deliveries to the customers. The rail, we didn't use that much rail before, but that has increased. And rail, overall, there has been some challenges of the availability of train. It has been getting down a little bit the last time. There's been challenges when it comes to how to pass the borders, and that has been going much better. What we have seen on equipment, the containers and stuff like that, that is actually a little bit better right now. And lead times is also improved in the rail area. So we get the parts we want. We pay a lot of money for it. We have been forced to build up stocks, but we don't have any big stoppages. It happens small stoppages now and then where we have to move production, but we keep things floating, but it's a lot of job. Just one example, when it comes to ocean rates, we negotiate every month ocean rates. We have reviews with the suppliers because it goes up, it goes down. So it's so much work on the pricing and to book the capacity. Then also here, you can see the price and capacity index for the road. You see to the left, you see the capacity index for road transportation. And then you see the blue, the price index. So there has been some increases in road, but it's not like so dramatic as we see for air and ocean. And then there are some new roles coming up in road freight that might affect us. It's about, first we had rules about the driving and the rest period. How much time does the drivers have to rest? Now it's from February posting working hours. How that will be much more controlled, how many hours the drivers works. Cabotage, that is, it's a lot of companies, like companies that PO mailbox companies, they are registered in one country, but then they work all the time in some other countries, long working hours. And there will be new rules from February. And for the road in Europe, this thing will, of course, it's good because it's better competition, more fair competition, but it will, of course, also affect the pricing. Then you will hear more about this. It will be interesting later to listen to Peter also and his view. Now I jump in a little bit into decarbonizing, because decarbonizing is also so important linked to the supply chain. Within SKF right now, we have two big major targets. One is that all our production facilities all over the world will have net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. So this is really the footprint of what we do in our factories, but also the offices. But then the bigger challenge, that is what we have set up as a target to by 2050, that our full supply chain from the suppliers, transportation to our factories will be net zero. And that is a real big challenge. And what do we talk about? The scope. Here you can see suppliers, SKF and our customers, and then you see the different scopes. Scope 1, that is the energy and heat in our own factories and premises, but it's also the vehicles. Scope 2, that's all the energy. And with scope 3, then we start to look at the complete supply chain with suppliers and also SQF and the customers. So with suppliers, it's the transportation. We buy direct material, that's the steel and the rings and the balls, electronics. And then it's indirect material, the machines, the tools, and stuff like that. It's the manufacturing equipment from the suppliers. And then in our own premises, there we will add the downstream transportation that's from us to the customers, the waste, the travel, but also our employees commuting to our premises. So that's the scope, and that is defined by the European Union. And for us, the scope is suppliers and SQF when it comes to the customers, their transportation, how they use our products. That is a very difficult thing for us. We cannot influence that, so that is out of our scope that we focus on. This is actually our carbon footprint at SQF. So you see on the top, waste not that big, ICT not that big. You have the manufacturing equipment, it's not that big. Then you see travel, it's actually quite small. And those figures are 2019 figures in metric ton. Employee commuting, there you suddenly see that is a little bit bigger. And then we come to the upstream transportation. If you look at the upstream transportation, that's quite big. Indirect material, the green one, that's my biggest area of responsibility, is not that big. But then we see direct material. And that is all the steel that we buy, that we send around the globe. That is huge. And that will be a huge challenge. And then we have the energy scope and also what we have in the factory. So to 2030, it's the internal stuff, the energy use. But to 2050, we have to take away all this green one, the gray one, the direct material, so that all our steel suppliers, they need to be CO2 neutral. And if you look at our own operations, you see the revenue, the turnover, and then you see the energy use and the emissions. So what does this shows that we are on a path then to take down our CO2 emission in quite a good way by, of course, we have increased sales, but we have reduced the energy use. How do we do that? That is a lot of activities to stop machines when they are not on. It's to change machines, and it's to do some big work when it comes to consumption for the buildings and stuff like that. But you also see that the energy use and the CO2 emissions is going down more than the use. And that's because we have started to buy a lot of green energy. And this thing is monitored very strictly in SQF. And we have been doing that for some years, but now the push, as you see, it's increasing to really deliver on the CO2 emissions. So in operations, number one, the focus to improve energy and resource efficiency within our own operations. It's to do ISO certification for our factories. We have 91. Currently, we have done it in 44. And then a big challenge also, we need to monitor the energy performance in all factories. We have to measure it. We have now the new targets, and also the investment. It's a huge thing that we invest in energy and resource efficiency. One thing is that we buy solar cells and stuff like that. But it's also to replace all the old machines that uses too much energy. And also we switched to renewable. Here you see 2020, we had 40% of all electricity we bought was renewable. Now I got the figure last week for 21, and now we are up to 50%. Then we join associations like the RE100, where we have committed together with those other companies to go to 100% renewable. And natural gas is also a big area in SKF that we review, but because we need to find an alternative for the natural gas, we cannot continue to use that. And for our suppliers then, the two big things, direct material and then the goods transportation. And for our suppliers, we start now to increase the demand on them, that they should have targets. The reporting scope 3 emissions from the suppliers, we want them to report, so we follow it up. When we select supplier now, we more start to have a selection criteria. It's their ability and their plans to reduce their emissions in the coming years. And then for the big suppliers, we do follow up their plans and support them. And the Steel Zero, there is a association, and we have joined associations to work on this steel sustainability roadmap. And also we try to fund research for the fossil-free bearing steel. For the goods transportation, it's a lot about the sourcing and the requirements, but it's of course also the regionalization that we cannot continue to buy steel in China, send it to Europe and US over time. Today we send a lot from China to Europe, and we also send a lot to Mexico, for example. So there is a lot of work to develop new suppliers. And let me see. I just want to show you an example. Those are the last slides, but those slides are probably the most important in this presentation, because this is the ETS, that's the spot price for emission rights. And you see that the emission rights were at about 25 to 30 during 2020. And if you look at 21, you can see that it's going up to around 60, 63. If we then look at, excuse me for some Swedish here, but it's so you can see the figures. If you look at to the left, you see for Europe and USA, you see this, what I told you about, that's around 30, 2020. You see that 29. And if you look at 25, 40, it will go up to 63 and then up to 140 US per ton. That is the cost for the excess emissions. US from 63 to 140. And to the right, you see another IEA Net Zero 2050 report, where they also show that this is going up. How much will it go up? No one knows. But how will this affect us? This is a real example, and this is probably the most important if you look at the supply chain and how we will work in the future. If you look at the yellow line, sum of allowance, those are the allowance for this particular supplier. This supplier is based in Europe, and they have a allowance where they can stay. On the production, you see the production, that is this gray going up and down. And 2021, you see two gray lines. One is if they increase production, the other is they are flat from today. And the green one, that is their plan for CO2 emissions. So if you look to the right, reduction target, the green is what they have told us, that this is our plan now to reduce the target, because this supplier, they are reducing the emissions. So the difference between the yellow and the green, what we see here is that they will actually be able to sell emission rights, because according to their plan, they will be under the allowance. So they can sell, they will earn money, they will have an income. So if this supplier today have a competitive price, then in the future, they will even be more competitive. But if it's a supplier that is vice versa, now I took a good example. If it's a supplier where you see this green line, if it's above the allowance, then they have to pay a lot for the emissions in the future. So what this curve will look like with allowances in the future for the different countries, that is linked to what authorities will discuss and what rules we will have, and that is a thing we are following up. So by this, I just want to show that the cost that we pay today's supplier will change significantly with
losses as China's LNG uses supply concerns.
Excuse me?
Sorry, it was my automatic here, my automatic terminal.
Okay, good. And then here we have the different associations we are collaborating with, Responsible Steel, Climate Group Steel, because it's a huge market that's following this right now. And for us, the strategy will of course be to find the good suppliers in Europe to deliver to Europe, and the ones that has the best plan for reducing their emissions. That will be a key thing for the future. Okay, and anyone that is interesting to look at our target more in detail, if you want to use it for your business, then you can go to the SKF homepage and look at a positioning paper. There you have our strategy to reach this target for 2050 more in detail. That's just a tip to you. Okay, Leah, that was the end of my presentation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Mr. Zedelund. Now we have about 5 minutes for a Q&A session. So please, to everyone, if you have any question, you may ask directly or put it in the chat. There is currently one question in the chat, and I will have also some questions, and my question is quite similar to that of Bruce Gay here in the chat, so I will read a question in the chat. The development of new steel suppliers new to your operations will involve cost-effective sourcing. This will be a challenge to profitability and shareholder return. How do you propose to attend to this challenge? And my question is basically very similar to that one. So aren't you afraid that it will be really, because you have said it's a huge challenge, especially to reduce emissions on your supply chain, that it will be too costly for you, that effectively it will be a big push for your competitors, be it in China or United States or other countries that won't be so ambitious in this reducing goals or goals of reducing CO2 emissions?
Yeah, you can say that in the end, it doesn't really matter what we as a company want. We want to do this, but the thing is that this is business. If we want to sell bearings in the future, then we have to do it. So this is not like we want to be in business to be a responsible company, but it's much bigger than that. If we want to stay in business, we have to do this, because if you look at the automotive industry, they are the first. The automotive business, they have already approached us and asked us about this. Volvo car, they have put a cost on the CO2 emissions, which means now they select suppliers that can really show them that they are working on this in a credible way. And this pressure is just increasing from our customer. So that we have to do it. And then the thing is that to be competitive on the market, we have to do this faster than our competitors. So going forward now, if you look at the steel mills, we have to find out the steel mills that have the most credible plan to be CO2 neutral. It could be a steel mill in China that is really good today, really efficient, and the prices are so good. But if they don't have a plan to take the CO emissions right, if there come regulations that will make their cost going up so much because they don't have any plan. If you compare that steel mill with a company in Europe or somewhere that really have a credible plan, they have already taken investment decisions where they in the coming 3 to 4 years will reduce their own CO2 emissions, they might be more competitive in the future. So in the end, this is business. For all companies in Europe, this has to be so clear that the ones who don't look at this risk to be out of business, this has to be taken seriously. Mm-hmm. So if you look at shareholder value, this comes from our shareholders, our board. This is one of the focus areas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So your shareholders are basically okay with that, and they see it as a way how to improve your competitiveness in the future.
It's absolutely competitiveness. And if we don't do this, we will not be competitive. We have to take this seriously, and we have worked on it for many years. But what we have worked on it real for our own premises, our own factories. We have achieved the result. But now these demands is just increasing so much, and now we have to take the responsibility for our supply chain. And then you see, the scope increases so much.
Mm-hmm. During your presentation, you have said that you will be selecting your suppliers according to criteria, how they are green or CO2 emissions efficient. But there is a growing problem of so-called greenwashing. So some companies are only pretending that they are green or they are reducing their emissions, but in fact they don't. How would you select the right from wrong, the companies who are really making steps into carbon neutrality, and companies who are just faking that and they are pretending they are doing that?
I haven't been involved so much about faking, because if you look at the steel mill, for example, they're all their emissions, because in each country now, companies needs to report it. So what we already today, for all the European steel mills, you find the data on the internet. What I showed you about these lines with allowances and where they are, they report it to authorities, which means this is available data. So a lot of this data is already available in many of the for many companies.
Okay.
And also if you look at there are now a lot of standardization and rules of how to report this, so that we have credible reporting. It's a lot of work going on also on the reporting side.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will have time for another Q&A session after the second presentation of current of this session, and so I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Rožek, who will, as I already announced, speak about the future progress of supply chains and of course all those problems we have been speaking about as well, so congestions and some other related issues, and of course how it will impact not just companies in the Czech Republic but globally. So Mr. Rožek, now the floor is yours, and we are looking forward to your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. Well, if you allow me just half a minute to introduce our association. The name, I think, is quite clear. It's the Association of Forwarding and Logistics. We are covering about 180 plus companies of logistic industry in our country, plus a few schools, some lawyers, insurance companies. Well, I mean, all who are acting or wants to monitor and follow the go of logistic industry in our country. And of course, because we are also connected with the rest of Europe, also in Europe. So it's about ourselves. And before I open my presentation, I have to admit, many thanks to Jan for the data he presented. Very nice and quite comprehensive. And I have to say, I envy SKF, their position, the vision they have. I envy SKF and alike companies. They are so robust. They may keep the line they have taken, and they may speak even in these times about the development for the forthcoming 15 or 25 years, because logistic industry is not in the position. You know, it reminds me of my life 30 years ago. I've got really a dream-based puzzle, about 5,000 pieces, a big sail ship on high seas. And when I was almost complete and all the pieces were put together, I've forgotten to glue them together. My son, small baby, came and destroyed the picture into pieces back. So this is what we are now in with logistic, and what we are now trying to put together with, and now I have to say and underline my main message, with a very dim future. I cannot share the optimism for the forthcoming year. It is not at all about major improvement. If we may meet again by Christmas this year, and we may say at the moment that we have improved by few pieces, say reliability of the supply chain, or if we may say in Christmas 22 that we are going into another year of improvement, that will be fine. Not at this moment. Let me just start now the presentation. I have made the presentation. A few slides we will most probably skip them. In few slides I'm repeating that what Jan already mentioned. So, and the rest are just messages, fresh messages from Europe and global press releases. So let me just comment on the major. No, that's not correct. It's not correct. Sorry again. I have to share the screen first. So again, what we have already lived in for, it's already the 30th of the pandemic, by the way. So it's quite a long time. The roots are known. It was the offer and demand of timing, especially in the US, the helicopter money, high wave or tsunami of the public and also private consumption. Then combined with the by the shipping, and then we had a lot of problems with containers, etc. Blah blah blah. I mean, it's all well known. It was already shown on the slides. Then not to be seeing that light in the tunnel for after the first year, we have found that the continental supply chains are too much reliable on the main connection lines, on the shipping, the marine transportation, and the air freight, as was also shown. Air freight has lost most of the capacity because of such a simple and stupid problem that people were not flying. So, this was all already commented many times. There's one more point which was not stressed yet. The logistic sector, the logistic industry in the past decade has done a major step into the world of automation. Most of the processes are now controlled by I don't call it artificial intelligence, but by computers, by platforms, cloud connections, etc. But when you put a simple bug into this system, for example, such a simple and stupid problem as a late arrival of a ship, or even a canceled arrival of a ship to a port with either export or import containers, then the whole system collapses. It's the puzzle where you have, I don't say 5,000 pieces, but you have 15 to 20 pieces, and if you don't put them together, or if one is missing, then the picture is not legible. So this is unfortunately the problem of nowadays, by the way, for many logistic companies to manually process those missing links and to manually correct the mistakes which are now in our managing systems. So first, what is now actually the main problem is China. China is in the middle of the whole game, is the pivot of the game, and unfortunately is one of the key players who are not playing exactly to the rule, because Chinese government has taken very strict measurements. They have taken very strict zero COVID policy, and whenever they find a single, or not a pandemic, but multiple case of the disease elsewhere, they close completely the whole region, the port, the airport. The supply chains are, of course, immediately disrupted. It happened already in the fall and in December, especially in December, several times. If you remember what happened in Ningbo before the end of the year, then it was, and then before it was Yantan, but Ningbo, then the airport of Pudong in Shanghai was closed for almost 1 week. Then the Zhejiang province, which was also closed around Christmas for almost 2 weeks. Unfortunately, that region is quite important for batteries and for the pharma industry. Now we are we are monitoring situation in the north, in Tianjin, Beijing areas, which are quite important for automotive production. And we also have some very quiet, because China, by the way, has put ban on any information of this kind, and not very strange, but China even closed monitoring sources. For example, the ships which are entering the China waters are disappearing from any screens, and you can only find them again when they leave China and sail away from the Chinese shore. So now, at the very moment, there is also some rumor about complete closure of the central Chinese city of Xi'an, which is, by the way, the major railway hub for almost all trains leaving China, from central China, from the provinces of Sichuan and Hubei, where, to our greatest sorry, most of the production leaving China by rail are concentrated. Then the situation is even multiplied, or will be multiplied very soon by the Olympic Games in China. They start, I think, about 14 days, and the Chinese New Year festivity, which already started. The first report of companies closing because of the New Year's Eve are on the table. Some of the companies, especially in the Eastern Belt, have allowed their workers to go to join their families, and the production is stopped, and it will be stopped, in fact, for interrupted almost for 4 weeks ahead, which, on the other hand, again, may affect the supply chains very severely. Brackets. Some experts say this might be a positive, might have a positive effect on the supply chains, especially out of China, because there'll be no supply of new goods, no supply of laden containers, but hopefully the ports will continue stay open, and some of the overstock will leave the country, but no one knows, because if the Chinese government, which also some people say will freeze down the whole country before the Olympic Games, then there will be no progress. So the question mark on the other side of the world, and it's also, I think, what was already mentioned, is the timing of the supply flow, or the restocking in both US, Canada, and Europe. Some people, as Jan mentioned, go the way they are ordering their supplies with a minor or bigger advance. Okay, this can be done, I think, for the B2B supply chains, but not exactly in the B2C, because B2C are now also disrupted, and no one knows what the consumers will do. I would be slightly optimistic as regards the US, because US has already spent their money. The helicopter money Mr. Trump has spread over the country, sprayed over the citizen is most probably already used or consumed, but the Europe is still in the middle of and not even at the peak of the wave of purchases. So this is the actual situation. In shipping, as was already mentioned, yet now there's just one fresh figure about the imports to Europe from Far East China, measured by the volume of cargo, or I mean the volume, the flow, or this frequency of sailing through Suez Channel at the beginning of the year. There was a slight decrease, about 7%, in the number of ships, or the capacity of ships sailing through Suez Channel northbound. But well, who knows if it is a trend, which would be quite good, or if it just was something about the result of the Yantian and Ningbo closures. We don't know. Now, the flow is also affected by congestion on the ports, and the port operation and the on carriage to the hinterland also mentioned. At this moment, we have dramatical situation in the German ports, Hamburg and Bremerhaven. The shipping companies have tried to solve the problem with skipping these two ports, especially Hamburg in the past, in the last quarter. About 20% of the shipping arrivals were either diverted. Shipping lines are now using a small port called Jade Weser. It's a port of Wilhelmshaven. Unfortunately, this port, for especially mid-European importers, is out of usage, or is very difficult to be reached. It's a port which has not been developed with the proper infrastructure behind. The other port which is also in problems is Rotterdam. Rotterdam reports about 5 to 7 day delay in the import transit of containers, which is also affecting the on carriage, of course. And the third port, which is really congested, is Felixstowe in the UK. But I think UK now with Brexit has also other problems, not only the port congestion. And now, as the ball is, or the snowball is growing, and again, because of the logics of logistics, although I always say logistic is not logical. So there are problems in the on carriage. You may have heard about the troubles Deutsche Bahn as the leading rail freight provider in Central Europe, or not only Central Europe, has had in the past year. And this is the snowball. If a ship comes late to the port, discharges a lesser or bigger number of containers than expected, and I have to remind you of the fact that shipping lines are not obliged to advance report their arrivals or that what they are carrying then 48 hours before the the actual arrival. So if a port is running their operation according to some long time schedules and some automation, and the ship comes a day or two later with a bigger number of containers on board, then of course the system is not able to absorb it. The containers are put on the waiting list, and they are blocking the terminals. Then if import containers are not taken in due time, the export is blocked because export containers have no space to pass through the walls of full containers for the imports. And on top, the importers are billed heavy amounts, really high amounts of waiting time penalty for demurrage. So the snowball is now, unfortunately, with congested ports growing very fast, and the costs of supplies are also exploding. Now, a little bit about the air freight. Air freight is the only sector which has somehow survived the first shock. Yes, 80% of cargo in the world carried by airplanes is belly cargo. Belly is the cargo which is taking the space left by luggage of the passengers sitting on the main deck. So if the passenger flights were cancelled, or really quite short, then there was no belly space. But the air freight show quite a robust position. Many airliners have reconstructed, or reorganized their planes, their passenger planes into semi-freighters. Even got a very nice name, freighters. Some companies, especially the smaller companies in the Asian sector, they have even chartered some old engines, and now even the big players like Air France has waken up, and they are ordering new freighter planes. So even with the high prices at the very moment, this industry seems to be recovering from the first shock very fast. On top, the US passengers have returned to the planes already in summer. Well, Europe is still a little bit stiller, but even in Europe, the flights are improving. And there's a nice message from Prague. There are now again 2 arrivals of freighters weekly. Regular freighters for weekly. Coming to Prague since 2 weeks ago. So, and Prague is an off the net airport. It is not the hub of Europe like Frankfurt or Heathrow, London Heathrow, Charles de Gaulle in Paris. All these 3 airports are almost at their 2019 output. So this is This is a good news, but unfortunately, air freight is now and always was just an additional source of freight. They were usually at about 8% of the whole of the global volume of cargo carried. Most of the cargo remains in the hands of the shipping companies. As regards the rail freight, we have seen some figures of about the waiting times at both the Chinese-Russian border in Manjuli and also in Korgos-Dostik, and at the European side between Poland, Belarus, or Russian Kaliningrad and German border. There were few but major impacts on top. First of all, it was the unrest in Kazakhstan. Although the Kazakh railways have repeatedly reported that nothing happened at all, but these messages were we were not able to verify them because internet connection with Kazakhstan was off for almost 1 week, and on top these guys are, sorry to say, permanent liars. They always try to be nicer than they are. And the second, unfortunately, also the European, or I mean the Russian, Belarus, European borders were also affected by Mr. Lukashenko's friendly approach, you know, or unfriendly approach, as you may call it. And so the flow of cargo has reached another record in the last year. It was almost 1 billion TEU, but the progress might have been much faster, especially with the heavily investment of the Russian railways in the far eastern part of the Trans-Siberian, and opening of additional crossing points, especially in Poland and Lithuania. So we hope that the railway will remain another source of freight, but the progress is slower than expected. And we also have a problem on the road. It was also mentioned, but I mean, it's a funny combination. Brexit has put additional pressure on the logistic from and to Europe. From the 1st of January, the last extra of, I mean, the last allowance on custom clearance of goods from UK to Europe, I mean, to European Union, has been lifted. So there are more waiting times in on the border. That resulted in several companies reporting that they've, I mean, several companies, logistic companies have reported they will close their lines to UK. Now it goes the way of specialization, but, and this is the funny connection, that will leave many drivers who were serving the connections, the lines between European Union and UK. It will leave them available for the European, I mean, intra-European market, and it will ease up the problem we have now. We are missing about 80,000 drivers in Europe, so let's hope that every coin has two faces. That this coin, when then around by the beginning of the year, will also provide some improvement. And last but not least, I have one more slide. We have now France in the head of the European Union. There were big expectations linked to France and the French leadership. They have a very nice motto: renewal, strength, cohesiveness. Unfortunately, France is also heading into the presidential elections in April. I mean, March and April. So they are much more concentrated on the on the elections. Mr. Macron is now every day in the TV, but remarks, I mean, some news about the leadership are much weaker. France is a player, an important player in the decarbonization. Good for Czech Republic. France has taken the lead in the nuclear power, not renewable, but nuclear power importance. The French nuclear stations are quite a power. Also, France has been a player. I mean, one of the countries who have fixed the Fit for 55 campaign. But now, sorry, I mean, I have to say, so far we have not heard from France about the transport industry and the impacts of the Green Deal and so at all. So this is, I think, the end of the presentation. So once more, to put it in one sentence, the situation now, it's, I think, 20th of January, is not very clear. The shipping lines are improving their reliability. They are returning very slowly, but returning to the schedules. The delays are not anymore in average 14 days, but only 10. I mean, global average, okay. There are some improvements in the new container supply. This year we shall get about 2 million new containers, and all containers are not scrapped as fast as it used to be before. So even the problem of empty equipment might not solved, but might be simplified. There are some improvements in the I mean, major improvements, of course, but some improvements also in the Chinese supplies. Let's hope that in the forthcoming first quarter, it will remain as such. But the big part is, again, Olympic Games and the Chinese New Year. If China keeps the zero tolerance, the zero COVID policy after the New Year Eve, the New Year celebration, the people return back to their offices and factories, and the Omicron variant will spread over China, which it will definitely do. Then the supply chain will be again in the ruins. But unfortunately, if China collapses, then there is no more solution, because most of the production and supplies in the world rely on China. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rožek from Association of Forwarding and Logistic for your presentation. I would ask you, as your colleague as well, because you have said a very interesting thing that there may be problem regarding lots of automation in the international logistics. So it's my maybe naive question, if part of the solution is not, at least temporarily, to take a step back into the older times, to lesser automation and to be more without it, more human dependent, let's call it this way, and then maybe it would bring the normal situation faster. Or is automation so embedded in the system that it's not so easy, it's not so possible to take this step to improve the global supply chains currently?
It's not a naive question at all. It's a very good question. And the answer is, if it could be possible, I call it a paper and pencil logistic system. If it would be possible, this is the only solution, or it will be the only solution. The problem is that during the last decade, hand in hand with automation, or maybe as a reason for automation, we have released most of our workforce to, of course, also make the production cheaper. I mean, the effectiveness was the key word. So we are now at but I don't think that not only us, but the logistics sector is facing problem where to find back this helpful hand, where to find people who are able to sit back to their phone and a pencil and help the I don't say funny system now, but people are helping computers to work properly. and I have it at home, by the way, because my wife is a freight forwarder, and imagine that in 21st century, she is trying to find out the vessel positions on the internet, but because the vessel position is not the key element in the report. The key element is the cargo, I mean the consignment position. She has to combine 3 or 4 sources to come as close as possible to have, I mean, reliable data. But it's not 100% reliable because the ship may then divert from the main line all of a sudden, or the planes are flying to a schedule, but the ship may just skip the port and everything is in ruins again, you know. So yes, we have to. People who are now managing freight forwarding logistic companies are recruiting anyone and any head who is willing and able to do at least the manual job by the computer, but the people are missing.
So do you think it may be a major lesson of this logistic crisis to get back, as you put it, to pencil and paper to some extent in the future years?
When we, and I think this is a task for, say, 1 year more, not more. When we put the puzzle together, then we will come back to okay, we call it now digitization. Okay, digitization is a better world for what we are, and we have to come as soon as possible to a level which is, by the way, still produced and improved step by step in all logistic companies. But now, in the meantime, I don't know how to express it. In the meantime, we are really in a very short, quite short of any long time solution.
I think, or you have said it, that it's not clear right now, but what's your expectation about how this crisis will develop in forthcoming months? So when we will be able to say it's all back in the normal, like before the pandemic hit? Do you think it may be this year or next year? I think it's difficult to forecast this, but what's your best forecast currently?
Let's divide it into 2 levels: the schedules, reliability, and the prices. So the second tier is much easier to comment. It will never come back to the pre-pandemic situation anymore. The prices will most probably decrease, but not to those you may say now dream level of 2,500 US dollars for a 40-foot container from Shanghai to Hamburg. It will never happen anymore. The prices now are at, say, 12,000, 13,000, and the forecast, if everything goes as we expect, means the demand will lower, especially the private consumption will lower, and there'll be no more disruptions. So it may come back to, say, half of the nowadays level, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. I am a little bit skeptic about those 5,000. I think it will keep at around, or it will reach a level of, say, 6,000. Brackets. It also in hands of the shipping companies. They are now on horse. Shipping companies are now, they are not a monopoly yet, but after many mergers and bankruptcies of the smaller shipping companies, there are now only 3 big players, 3 alliances who have divided the world into proportions, and they dictate the world. So until the shipping industry grows, I mean, in the capacity to such a level that they will really have to come back to the client with a real offer, then they will keep the prices high because this is a profit. And if you have read the figures, which is the single container carrier or logistic provider Maersk has produced last year, so I mean they are on they are now at the table, and they of course eat as fast as they can. Second part is a little bit more difficult to comment. I think that if the problem with China disappears or not even appear after the Olympic Games and the CNI, then I think summer, when the stocks for the public, for the private consumption will be full back, and I think this year and only this year will be the year of the continuing problem, and then I hope next year 23 may bring visible solution, not return back to the pre-pandemic levels, but I think by the end of by Christmas of this year, I hope we will say, okay, the worst is behind, and let's try to fix it again.
So the logistic crisis will take more time than the pandemic itself.
Definitely, as I said, it was a puzzle, or I call it a rubber rope, and it cracked, but not only in its middle, but it cracked into several pieces, and try to glue a rubber rope together when it is stretched. So we have to come back to still waters, in stabilized offer and demand, and then we will try to fix it. We will fix it sooner or later, of course. We have to. This is our job, and competitiveness. It was a nice word I have heard from SKF, Jan. So also the logistic companies have to compete, and they have now a very strong enemy. The shipping companies are now taking part in the logistic as well. So we have an homework for the forthcoming time. It will not be seen on the surface. It will be in-house task, but we will fix it. But the timing is still a little bit a question mark. But I think this year is the decisive one.
Yeah, but when you are able finally to put all the pieces of the puzzle together again and fix the problem, why the prices will stay elevated forever compared to the pre-pandemic level? Because when the puzzle is finally put together again, I think the prices should go down to the pre-pandemic levels. Why not?
I am a my basic education is economy, but I was not a good pupil. So there's one point which I don't understand. The explanation by many managers, and especially retailers and logistic managers as well. There is a high level of inflation, so we have to increase the price. I always thought that it should be the opposite way, that the high prices are the reason for the inflation. So might be another problem. The competitiveness of many companies, and most probably also clearing of the market is the answer. If and logistic, we have a lot of small companies which will probably disappear, and very soon disappear, because they will not be able to keep the pace. And when they disappear, then the big ones will be able and stronger to fix it, and again because they will have much more power to work on the puzzle from many angles.
Yeah, that's rational. Less competitiveness means high prices compared to the pre-pandemic level. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your answers, Mr. Rožek. I have here some questions from the auditorium. Again, please, if you have any question on both speakers do ask here in our chat, or you can raise your hand directly via the platform. There is a general question maybe on Lea, if it's possible for both presenters to share their presentations by sending them to the chamber.
I can manage it if Jan and Peter will allow me.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So both presentations will be at your disposal at the chamber,
and also a recording of this session will be on YouTube within a few days. So I will send all participants to link to YouTube to check it once again.
I would.
Thank you, Lea.
May I react to one of the remarks? A company called Hasted. Very attractive remark about. I mean, bringing the production of, especially of the most important supplies closer to Europe. It's a big issue also for, by the way, for logistic. And again, China is quite active in that. This Belt and Road initiative is visibly heading this way. It's visibly following this lane. But the question is, where, and maybe it's a question also to Jan, where those big companies developed in China and very effective in China can find their new address in Kazakhstan, in the Middle Asian countries, one idea, or say in India or Pakistan or Turkey, because we would like to know that. It's the, of course, at this moment, it is the production who are kicking the ball, and we will react on that. So what might be the new the relocation of, say, steel mills or chip production or textile industry? Well, textile industry is now already out of China, but I mean, these products we are missing in Europe, or we are much relying on, and they are disrupted, or supply chain is disrupted. Yeah. Or anyone else?
No, I think, Peter, I think this is a very interesting question. And what we have seen now the last 2 years is that we have been so dependent on China and Asia. It's such a big supplier base. As transportation cost has been very low. There has been good pricing. But now the last 2 years, reliability is so bad, cost is so high. And we see also in the coming years, the availability of transportation, the demand is much higher than what we can buy. And it's about time, it takes time. When you talk about steel mills, this has already started with us. We are already talking to companies in East Europe for steel. We are talking to Russia about steel. We are trying to build up supply base for steel in Mexico to deliver to Mexico. But so this takes time because we need to develop suppliers, we need to approve them, we need to have customer approval in some cases, so it takes time. If you look at electronics, we don't buy that much electronics, but the car industry cannot be dependent on Asia. They need to have a European supplier base. So this is on a European Commission level where there is big money now into building up capacity, and it will take time.
So I mean, it's suffering a little bit from periods of time where the price has been the major factor for companies when they were choosing the suppliers.
Yes.
And basically now it's hitting them in the back now, maybe for going too far.
Yeah.
I see basically a bit of the arrogance in the automotive industry, especially of their arrogance to suppliers, maybe has resulted in that they are now suffering because they cannot get goods local.
Yeah.
And what do you mean by the arrogance?
Pressing prices and conditions to an extent where European companies have not been able to supply.
It's moving from price to real TCO and sustainability focus. I mean, look at the car industry. We have reduced our sales to car. That's only because of the electronics and the supply situation, because they can't produce, they don't get their parts. So now it's how do you plan your supply chain for the future so that you are sure that you get it, and also that you control the sustainability thing, because the CO2 will be so costly. So much more regionalization, and also to get the stability in the supply chain, so you have the availability.
Maybe a general question, when, as you said, Jan, there is a reallocation of your supplies from China to other countries, you have named Russia or Mexico, don't you think that there will be some reassessment on the part of China of their zero COVID tolerance policy, because of now maybe in Beijing they have seen that it's counterproductive for them to be so strict because of their consumers will simply go to another country for supplies, and they may pose a long-term problem for China's economy, lowering their exports significantly. So don't you think that there may be some reassessment in the China?
No, it's China. If you've seen in the growth figures for China, historically, it has been quite high. I don't remember the exact figures, but if you look 2021, the economic growth in China is not that big, because now there are political risks, there are supply risks and stuff like that, which means China needs to change. They have a risk of not growing as much as they have done before, because companies are pulling out of China. And it's less investment in China. It's not the same positivism about China right now. And this will cost for them.
Definitely.
Europe can't be dependent on China over time.
But I would add, there's one point which for us, and I have been in contact with Chinese partners many times, it's a very high unpredictability of the Chinese partnership in the micro sector, also the macro sector. They are much more driven, and I can see that even in the official report, they are much more driven by the political future than the commercial future now. You know, if as I mentioned already, if the Chinese management, or I mean the top management, decides to put ban on any information, any logistic source of information, without any shy overnight, then for me it's a sign that they are really out of just the normal partnership anymore, and they are just politically driven. And I think the Chinese government is very much afraid of any unrest which might occur from some high level of diseases. If you imagine that there will be 1 million tests a day in China, okay, 1 million is nothing in the ocean of people there, but 1 million positive tests, well, and people sitting at home, it will be a disaster for the ruling party. So they are trying. That's why this is what I find as a reason for that you might call it stupid, but logical zero COVID policy.
Thank you very much. Maybe last questions, if there is no question anymore in the chat room, because some people already gone off because of, for example, Mr. Pavel. Many thanks to the speakers for a very interesting presentation. I have to leave for now. Bye. And some other guests. So maybe last question, maybe on Mr. Rožek, what will be the impact of the logistic crisis on Czech economy itself? Do you think there will be a longer term negative impact in terms of higher elevated inflation, of course, because as we know, we are very much dependent on foreign trade, and such big issues and high prices in foreign trade and transportation and logistics, of course, may pose a long-term problem and long-term inflation problem, especially for the Czech economy.
Well, yes and no. I think now the wave of, increasing prices is quite far away from the transportation prices anymore. Okay, anyone now who increases price because it's becoming the window is open, so they say it's because of higher costs. For example, transportation. I don't think this is the main reason anymore. It might have also a positive impact on Czech Republic because we are a logistic hub in Europe. For many production, the producers or the clients are keeping their stock in our country, and if the productive industries in Europe will have to increase their stocks, it may happen that they will concentrate on Czech Republic. They will add some points to the hub. Although we are already full now. I mean, the warehouses in Czech Republic are about 96% up to 96% full. So I think if this small country keeps its position in Central Europe as a logistic hub, it may bring some more fortune. For the time being, we are, for example, increasing the highway toll, or I mean the highway toll received has grown by 10%. It's also a result of the problem, and it's not bad. I mean, this money I hope will be reused for improvement of the infrastructure. So
yeah,
I know, but I mean, yes, of course, the bread, the beer, and the pasta will be more expensive, and they will recall transportation costs, although they are not the main reason anymore.
Yeah, you are right, because government toll from or highway toll was the highest, and income of the government from this toll was the highest last year in the history of the Czech Republic. So even though then there is logistic problems all around the world, this toll income was on such a high level. So if there is no more questions.
Sorry for interrupting, then I'd like to come back to one of the presentations that SKF had, if I have a moment. SKF mentioned that there is a trend, and you also mentioned it, Petter, that you're moving from suppliers in China to regional suppliers in Americas and Europe, mainly because of the emissions and the requirements that you will have under European law and American law most likely as well. But how much is this emission, and you also mentioned about the emission rights, that you can sell them and you get an income. How big are the costs of emission rights compared to the overall? And the second question as a follow-up to that, if you move from China into the European Union, how much do you save on emission rights for doing that, and how much extra cost do you get from that?
Yeah, I like your question. I saw your question, Stefan, but I cannot answer it. Why? When it comes to the reporting of emissions and stuff like that, we have that really good when it comes to our own factories. When it comes to the suppliers, the supply chain, we do not have that reporting in place yet. So that is actually what we are working with. You saw 5,000 suppliers plus all the transportation. This is actually one of the focus now to get the reporting up. We don't have it.
Right.
What we do have, we do have the spend. We know exactly how much we pay for transportation, and that is 2.6 billion SEK per year. That is 260 million euro per year. That is our transportation cost. We know exactly what we pay. And when it comes to the emission right, yeah, we pay something for emissions, but I don't have that figure. But this reporting now from all the supply chain, that will take a couple of years until we have that in place. And that will be not only important for SKF, that will be important for the market, for Europe, for China, for US, that we have standardized reporting.
Well, you are not moving because of cost anyway. You are moving because you need to.
Yeah, we have to. And the cost for emission will increase, and it will be much in focus.
Petter, do you have any information regarding this?
Yeah, well, I was very sorry to jump in. An example from the marine industry. 8 years ago, if I'm sure, the European Union has put into force a ban on the sulfur emissions. Well, I mean, not ban exactly, but they had to be reduced significantly. Most of the shipping companies have installed the called scrubber, which was a device, or just a device which cleans the emissions. I mean, the fuel output. The cost were $500,000 of one unit. Okay, that's fine. As from the last year, the marine industry globally has also followed the same rule, and some other companies, I mean, some companies like, for example, the French carrier, have taken the path to build ships on pressurized gas. Pressurized gas is now double the price of the common ship's fuel. So if the container will come to Europe by such a ship, then the price of transportation will be higher, minimum by 20%. Third, Maersk, the leading carrier, has ordered first ship which will be running on ammonia. The ship itself is twice as more expensive than the common construction. So it's not anymore $500 million, but it's around $450 million per ship per unit. Plus ammonia is not yet available everywhere. So it's a hybrid ship which will be running on the pressurized gas. So you may count, it's not easy to count because the fuel is not the only cost of shipping line, which has been then included into the price of transportation. But there will be definitely, there must be a definitely, and not only of course in the marine transportation, there must be an increase just because of the decarbonization, and if they keep the line of the high distance. Yes, if production moves from China to Russia, then shipping lines will be off the game. They will most probably not carry the goods anymore. But I'm quite skeptic about, I mean, steel mills are everywhere, but chip production has been concentrated into 2 or 3 countries in the world, and they are sitting next to each other. It's Korea, South Korea, China, Japan. If I remember well, there is not a single big, I mean, important chip producing company in Europe so far. So we will carry chips, we will carry parts, we will carry baby toys, like, you know, we will carry textile garments and so on from that area for minimum another decade. But I think it's not easy to build up a high-tech Taiwan. Sorry, Taiwan is China, I know. So it's not easy to found and build up a real producer of chips in a year or two, high-tech producer.
Leah and the other, I have to leave now, and it's
Okay.
yeah. Well, and what I will do, I have now a meeting with a German supplier for abrasives, and they want to discuss pricing because of energy cost increase and transportation increase. So this goes hand in hand.
Good luck.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Good luck.
Thank
you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your insights. It was very interesting and timely.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. So if there is no question anymore, thank you, Mr. Ojek, as well, for your insights and for your very insightful comments. And thank you, of course, all of you in the auditorium for your questions and for your time to be here with us today. And I thank on behalf of Nordic Chamber of Commerce and its partner for this year, YIT, to all of you, and looking forward to meeting you again, maybe at another occasion or session, maybe in person in the forthcoming months. So thank you once again. Happy New Year still, and hopefully this year will be better than the previous one, not just in terms of global logistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's my honor and pleasure to be with you, and I am really looking forward to be invited again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.